Welcome to our second session that we're hosting for reviewing stormwater site development plans. And again, my name is Brian Morganroth. I work for the city of Walla Walla, and I'm the stormwater coordinator here. Hopefully most of you, if not all of you, were here for yesterday's session, where we talked about all of the important information that's in our Eastern Washington Stormwater Manual that's really necessary or needed to do good site plan review work. And also we talked a little bit about what we do here at the city of Walla Walla and the use of our design standard handbook that we have. So we're going to kind of go a little bit farther today, and we're going to do a couple of things today. We're gonna look at some example sites that have been turned into the city in the past. These are examples that were turned into the city. They are real examples. The names of the developers and whatnot we've tried to do our best to make sure that they are not out there. We're not trying to solicit for anyone, but we do want people to understand that there are no right or wrong answers in these exercises. We just want people to see things from the point of view that we see as far as a site reviewer, and then maybe have a discussion about how in the future we can make things better, both for all of you and ourselves here, as far as what we're going to be asking for from our developers. So the end result here is that we're looking to basically put together a product, if you will, that is beneficial both to the jurisdiction and to those proponents who are coming in to try to get their projects reviewed and approved. Before we do that, I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on something that is a requirement in our stormwater permit, and also something that's kind of near and dear to us here and at the city, and that's actually putting in or talking about opportunities to put in more green stormwater infrastructure. It's one of those things that as a jurisdiction, it can be a bit of a conundrum when your development services group, if you will, are putting down requirements for developers to come in and construct city streets, and which may not totally align to what can be done as far as improving the amount of green stormwater infrastructure that you have in your jurisdiction. So we're going to talk a little bit about a process and the processes that we have here at the city. Hopefully we'll stimulate some things that are going on there in your jurisdictions. This is something that I think is probably other jurisdictions do better, but I just wanted to share with you some of the things that we're trying to do to remain compliant with our permit and still make this kind of fun, because it actually is something that is different and interesting, and in the cases where it can be applied properly, really is an interesting and useful BMP that can be put out there to help reduce stormwater runoff and help treat it. So on the slide here, I've got a couple of documents that I put up that I wanted to bring attention to. Most of you have probably seen these, but these are documents that we keep around and we refer people to as frequently as we can. The one in the middle here is the Eastern Washington Low Impact Development Guidance Manual. It's put out back in 2013. It's kind of an old document. It has since been sort of incorporated into the new stormwater manual that was put out in 2019. So, but the document still exists, and it is a good reference tool to turn people on to if they're interested in finding out a little bit more about low impact development. The document on the right is actually it's a cover slide for a training that I believe exists up on the Washington Stormwater Center. If people on your staff are interested in different types of LID, then they should be interested in operating and maintaining them, because I mean that's the bottom line for all of this. Building a swale, putting in permeable pavement, or building a green roof is all fine and dandy, but you got to be able to operate and maintain it. And there are some really there's some really good information in these training slides here that kind of bring things to home, or to home for folks who don't really maybe understand what those concepts are. I'm not saying they're easy. In fact, they may be a little bit more difficult than maintaining a UIC dry well, for example. Okay, however, I think the return on investment wise, what you're looking at are some BMPs that are quite innovative and quite interesting. And what I found here in the city of Walla Walla is they're well accepted by the general public once they find out what they are. Most people don't understand when they're driving by a swale that's out on your say main road that that's a swale and what it does. And when they find out what it is and what it does, they're quite interested in it, and they're interested in finding out more about where other ones are in your town. When they find out that you've got something called permeable pavement, they've never heard of this usually, and they're very interested in finding out how it operates and why it's good. So these are the kind of things that are, as I see it, an opportunity to get out to the general public and to kind of increase their interest in any of this. So the last document on the left is a document that was put out, I believe, in 2020 by the State Department of Commerce. It's quite a large document, and it is about incentivizing low impact development. It is sort of targeted toward local jurisdictions. I found it very interesting to read, and I keep it around to reference, mainly because they did a really good job in documenting many of the different types of LID that's out there. And it kind of goes into depth about why low impact development is good, good for the community and good for private business, if you will, and why it's good to encourage it. So it's kind of a large document, but I would recommend it if you haven't seen it before. Certainly available. You can download it for free from the state, and a good reference piece of reference material to have around. I just wanted to kind of go into a couple of the what I consider to be the coolest of the low impact development BMPs that are out there. These aren't exactly new, but I think they are they show a lot of promise here at the city of Walla Walla, and I think in say arid and semi-arid climates, they actually probably show some promise as well for all of us over here on the east side. So in all of these documents, typically these these 8 different BMPs are what are usually discussed. So amending construction site soils, so that would be your BSM that you'd be putting in for bioinfiltration. Then there's dispersion, bioretention, trees, permeable pavement, vegetated roofs, minimal excavation foundations, and then rainwater harvesting. to varying degrees, these are all talked about in these documents. I would say some of them are way more applicable over here on the east side than they are statewide, and so that's why I've kind of picked on three, which we happen to are at least two of the three we're trying to get more of here at the city of Walla Walla. For example, I don't have anything against vegetated roofs, but in a climate such as the east side over here, where we experience very high temperatures in the summer, very cold temperatures, and a lot of snow in the winter, and really not that much rain, vegetated roofs are not impossible, but they're quite difficult to do. I'm not saying that we don't have any over here. I think we have a couple, but they're a bit more. Let's say they're a little bit harder to operate and maintain. So the three that I kind of wanted to talk about today were dispersion, permeable pavement, and then trees. So over here on the left side of the screen, a little hard to see, but I mean, this is kind of your juxtaposition here of hard engineering versus soft engineering. This is a page that I believe is out of the old LID manual. And it's a good representation of kind of what things have been in the past, which is our hard engineering, where we have, our standard pavement that flows into a storm drain that then flows into a pipe that goes on to a BMP, versus the soft engineering approach, which is pavement that might then run off the pavement into an infiltration trench, and then have a lot of great vegetation and then trees planted there to help with all of the uptake of the nutrients and transpiration of the water and infiltration of any of the water that doesn't go anywhere else. So slowly here in the city of Walla Walla, we have been seeing more and more of this soft engineering. And what I'll tell you is the way it gets popular is built on success. As we get a couple of these built in the private sector, we here at the city keep tabs on those, and as they mature, we tend to take people or talk to people and tell them, go by and take a look at this, because these types of GSI are really good. The maintenance is easier than you think, and aesthetically they're actually way more pleasing than just having a completely paved parking lot. So the one downside that I will say that I hear a lot of from our folks in the private sector is that it takes more room to do it. And the answer to that is maybe. Yes, certainly if you are cramped on space, it might actually take up too much space so that you could not provide your required parking, for example, if you're trying to putting it in a parking lot. However, I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and what I usually suggest to developers is that they bring on board a landscape architect early on into their process, because these guys are wizards. They know how to plant and grow things and use it to the advantage of whatever they're trying to do, whether it's screen parking from roadways, or whatever. And this is where you're kind of putting together that jigsaw puzzle of having to satisfy the development review standards, as far as how many street trees you're supposed to have, or if there is any screening requirements, or what size and amount of parking you can have. So I would just try to encourage as much as you can your proponents in the beginning of their projects to consider these types of options that are out there. The next one is dispersion. It's actually a BMP that's in the manual. As Doug pointed out yesterday, There's some very strict requirements for it, for size, and it does take up a lot of room. But I think people are quite surprised when they look into dispersion and consider using it, because it allows them to incorporate more green space into their development. And it turns out that actually clients of a lot of this private construction like this green space. They like having these green areas. They like having locations where they can actually take breaks, maybe not necessarily get off the property, but get out of buildings and move around. And so it's I think it's an opportunity that we're going to be trying to impress upon our local builders here more and more. And then finally, there's the good old tree here. We have a lot of there's a lot of back and forth about trees, especially in arid and semi-arid climates. They're difficult to grow, especially without irrigation, and we recognize that. But typically on commercial developments, for example, here in the city of Walla Walla, if they're putting in some sort of commercial development, they are putting in some sort of irrigation system, unless it's completely pavement. So we try to encourage our private developers to put in as many trees as possible. And I'm also going to share a story with you guys about how we're trying to do that more at the city level as well. So I want to just say as much as I can about trying to incorporate as many of those trees into your city projects or jurisdictional projects as you can. So the other thing I wanted to note here is just your SEPA determination. We touched on this a little bit yesterday, and I wanted to bring this back up again because here at the city, we, as most jurisdictions are, they are the in charge of doing the SEPA determinations. And what we found here at the city is we have both comprehensive plans and strategic plans that were developed here by the city. And we have clear direction from our city council and our other department heads and managers that any of the projects that we do must tick those boxes that are required in our comprehensive plans and our strategic plans. So for example, we amended our comprehensive plan a couple of years ago, and to bring it in line with some of the other ordinances and work that we've done. One of the things we did passed in I believe it was 2019 was a Green Stormwater Infrastructure ordinance here at the city, which basically says trees are good. Trees are part of the stormwater system, and they're recognized as such. And so therefore, we need to incorporate them as much as possible. So I would recommend, and you know, not all of you are in a position possibly to affect any of these plans, but I would recommend that you take a look at these plans if they exist in your jurisdiction, and take a look at them from the point of view of green stormwater infrastructure, and see if any of those goals are built into there. And if not, maybe talk to your management about seeing what can be done about that. Because when those types of goals are built into there, whenever you have a project that comes up and it needs to go in front of council, for example, or department head, it's really nice to be able to have the backing of those types of plans, so that you can say, hey, look, not only is this a good plan because it's taking care of, it's providing flood control, for example, or whatever the case may be, but we're also checking off these boxes for our comprehensive plan or our strategic plan. And again, as I mentioned, ordinances, whatever your type of code is in your jurisdiction, I would just suggest that you take a look and see if any of that exists. And if not, you may want to consider finding an avenue to try to make the case for getting ordinances built in, or codes that are built in that actually encourage or require green stormwater infrastructure. It's not too difficult to do, and it's usually a win-win situation. And when it's kind of centered around things like trees, I'm going to show you some information here in a little bit, and you'll kind of see there's a lot of benefits to things like trees that are much more beneficial than just stormwater. How difficult can it be? Well, it's maybe a little bit more difficult than you expect. Just don't want to paint a completely rosy picture here for you, but I do want to, let you know that there are some obstacles here and some steps that you need to probably be aware of and possibly go through if you're going to be successful here. And this is kind of a summary of how things happen here at the city. We're on a typically a 6-year cycle for our budget and our CIP. And so we try to do as best we can to get things going in that 6-year cycle, and then plan for plenty of review process along the way. So the first thing is basically review your planning documents and codes. Just be aware of everything that's out there in your jurisdiction. Identifying those green infrastructure opportunities, and just being ready to incorporate those into any of your projects is really important. If you're not part of your CIP process, understandably, you may not have a lot of control on this, but in a small jurisdiction like the city of Walla Walla, I'm allowed to provide input. And so one of the things that we do here is looking out at those projects, 6 years in advance. One of the eyes that I try to put on there is to make sure that we're looking at those projects and seeing, is there an opportunity for GSI, as small as it may be? Maybe it's planting trees, maybe it's putting swales in, maybe it's using permeable pavement, using dispersion, whatever that is. We want to try to put a tag on those projects and keep those in mind, so that you can use the opportunity there. Again, including GSI in your comp plan and strategic plan, really important. If you have that backing, then there really is no reason for you not to be including this into your projects. Adopting GSI ordinances or codes, that's a surefire way of making sure that you are you have a code, you have something that's backing you up, you have an ordinance that says I'm supposed to be considering this and implementing as much as I can. That's a very powerful tool. These last two things on the wheel here are I think probably more important after you've got the background work done, but certainly very important to keep in mind, and that is train staff. Okay, any of your plan review or maintenance staff, inspectors that are interested in all this, I would say form a team. It sounds very simplified, but you'd be surprised how many people aren't aware of what green stormwater infrastructure is and what opportunities can be taken advantage of once they're out there. So planners, plan reviewers, maintenance staff, any of these folks that are aware of what green stormwater infrastructure BMPs are, they can be your eyes and ears out there, especially your maintenance staff, because they're the ones that are out there every year. They're trying to keep your system clean. And once they understand the concept of GSI or low impact development, they're able to just think about that from that point of view and say, hey, I can offer you some suggestions. All right. So don't be afraid to include those folks on your team. Finally, plan for maintenance. All right. Um, Ensuring effectiveness of your GSI and the life of the project is really important. It's something that's talked about a lot here at the city, and I'm sure it's talked about in a lot of your jurisdictions. And the question that I always get is, why are we putting in all of these swales? Why these ponds? Why all of this stuff? Why can't I just buy another Vector? Why can't I just, buy another street sweeper and call it good? And well, the answer is that, Vectors and street sweepers and more pavement, while they may function, there is a cost involved with operating and maintaining them. And typically the life cycle cost on those is a little bit higher than it would be for a swale or some sort of dispersion, or even a landscaped area where there are trees. So I know there are people out there that keep better track of costs than we do out there, but we're trying to put together some unit costs for this so that we can speak intelligently to our council and our management staff to bring home the point that not only is it aesthetically pleasing to have these types of LID BMPs out there, but it actually in the long run may cost us a few less dollars to operate and maintain. So planning for this is really important, and knowing how much your cost is to maintain things. If you are in charge of that, or able to have some sort of discussion with those folks, is really important to find out how successful this is going to be in the future. So, okay. So again, I wanted to bring up a really simple thing here, which is planting trees. And this is a perspective from the city of Walla Walla. You may have things that are similar or not, but I just can't stress enough that the trees are superheroes around here. We've been designated a tree city. Gosh, I think for the last 20 years, we're quite blessed here in the city limits and the surrounding UGA for having lots of surface water. We're unique to the Eastern Washington area in that we have a lot of spring-fed streams through town, and have had that since the beginning of our area. So we have a lot of opportunity for tree growth here in town. And so you'll see a lot of trees when you come to town. Now, there are a lot of drawbacks from trees and maintenance. I'll be the first to admit that. And one is in the fall and the winter, when you have all those leaves that fall off and you have to do something about them. So that is a pain. However, I can tell you that we get more feedback from our citizenry around here when we decide to do something as far as maintaining our trees that are in the city than anything else, because it's a very touchy situation. Our citizens love our trees here in town. So planting trees, I highly suggest it. As I mentioned, the city passed an ordinance back in 2019 to make street trees are part of our green stormwater infrastructure. We even went so far as to do an inventory. We have about 7,000 street trees that are in our inventory now that are considered part of our stormwater system. And just one of the things I wanted to point out, I know it's kind of hard to see over here on the left-hand side of the page, but this is a recent report that came out for the city of Houston, Texas. They too recognize that trees were going to be very important to them, and actually provided a lot of benefit to them, and not just in the stormwater side of things. So it's kind of hard to see, but I wanted to point out that the orange bars up here are for the urban heat island reduction score. So each one of these different species of trees were scored off of these four different factors. So urban heat island, flood mitigation is the blue, air pollution score is the purple, and then the bottom one down here was carbon emissions. So bottom line is street trees in general provide us with they help us reduce our urban heat island. Aesthetically, they provide us with something that keeps our streets and our residents that live on them cooler. There's even been a lot of research that's done about how they tend to possibly influence the amount of a crime that occurs. So the more trees you have, the more calm your society is out there. So they just provide a whole lot of benefit for the entire community, as well as they take up a whole lot of stormwater. So on average, I think in the city's study that we did, we were looking at around 700 to 800 gallons a year that each one of our mature street trees were taken out of our system. So when you do the math, that's quite a large amount of stormwater runoff that is basically being just taken right out of the equation each and every year. And so I would highly encourage you to look into this a little bit more and incorporate these as much as you can. So
there is Brian, can I interject?
Absolutely.
There is a BMP within the Eastern Washington Manual.
Correct.
For trees, BMP F. I'm trying to find the number here. I'm scrolling through my copy of the manual. Hang on. That actually gives credit F 6.62 trees. It came out of it was developed in the LID manual that Brian referred to earlier. The Eastern Washington LID manual that came directly out of that. And it actually gives you the ability to reduce the amount of impervious surface that you're having to model for flow control and treatment based on the type of tree and the location of the tree. So there's different values for deciduous and evergreen trees. They do need to loom over the impervious surface. You don't get credit if they're sitting out in the middle of a grassed field, but if they are street trees and their canopy does go over the paved surface, you're allowed to reduce the amount of impervious surface you're having to consider in your modeling for flow control and treatment. So you need to, if you are going to be adding trees for new and redevelopment, you probably need to go to that BMP in the manual and pay attention to what's in there.
Perfect. Thank you, Doug. Yes. So a couple of the other things that I wanted to mention here before we move on is just, things like amending soils in your existing BMPs for treatment. It's at some point, your BMPs are going to need a deep dive in as far as maintenance is concerned. And some of the BMPs here in our infiltration swales that we have here in city of Walla Walla, we're actually trying to get a list together for the ones that we would like to revamp, because we do have a lot of input from our citizenry, and some of the earlier ones that we put in were basically infiltration swales that contain sod basically on the top of them, just because they were very easy to maintain that way. And we do hear a lot of feedback from our citizenry, which says we'd really like to see something other than just grass growing out there. So we're going to use that as an opportunity to amend what we've got, and definitely we're going to be putting in more BSM when we go out there and revamp these. So I would encourage you to keep that list and keep it going. The other thing that is kind of a new here in town that the city has started a project on, and we'll finish up this year, is incorporating permeable pavement into your projects. Okay. This is a really scary plank for many people to walk. Whenever you talk to them about it, there's usually more bad things said than good. But we've actually got a project that's going to be completed this year, where the city did incorporate permeable pavement into their a couple of their city streets in one of our reconstruction projects, which, by the way, Ecology gave us a grant funding for. So thank you very much, Ecology. It's not in our driving lanes. It's in the parking areas that are off the side of the street, and I've got a picture of that to show you. But we're encouraged by this. We like what we see. They were constructed just this past year. We're not finished yet. We haven't accepted them, but we look to put them into put them to work at the end of this year for its first season, and we really do like what we see. So we're hoping to incorporate more of that. And I know in different jurisdictions, typically private developers are the ones that kind of get out there and use these BMPs more, it seems like. But I would certainly encourage all the jurisdictions to look into it more. I think it's not as scary as folks think, but I will tell you that maintenance is really important for these, and so you need to have that consideration there when you're considering putting it out and doing the construction, because it's the long-term maintenance for permeable pavement that keeps it working as well as it does in the beginning. So, and then the last part here is what I mentioned before: establish a team of people who are interested in green stormwater infrastructure. For the city of Walla Walla, this was kind of done for us back in 2019. We partnered with our parks department back then, and we actually struck a deal with them in which they actually provide the maintenance for us around town for all of the city-owned flow control and treatment BMPs that are out there. So anything that is an infiltration trench or a pond or any sort of BMP like that, that's our parks department that we actually pay to take care of for us. So the backside of that is we provided some funds to the parks department so they could hire a full-time arborist. And that was the impetus for making sure that we got those 7,000 street trees into the fold for our stormwater system. And so we have a person that is dedicated to making sure that all of the street trees, as well as all of the other, I think we've got around 13,000 trees total that he's taken care of in town, all the trees in the parks and everywhere else. So we've decided in doing this that's important to invest in this, and that's how the city here has decided to do it. We worked out a plan that started in 2019, went through, it'll actually end up the end of this year, I believe, 2022, where we put our funds together, make sure we've got a program, and get the support and interest from the community. And I will tell you that just as a side note, this past weekend, actually, the Parks Department sponsored a planting event. We planted 110 trees, street trees, in different locations around town. These were locations where our community had given us feedback and said, gee, we really would like to have some sort of green infrastructure here that will provide us both aesthetics and use in any, or help in any different way. And so we had our first event that was sponsored by our Parks Department in probably, well, I think due to COVID, it wasn't done, I know, last year, and I don't think it was done in 2020. So our first official event, we went out and planted 100 trees. Great response from the public, and I can already see that we'll be doing that probably again next year this time. So these are one of the things that will snowball into success if you just get out there and partner up with the right people. So here's a couple of examples of what we've been talking about. And they may seem simplistic, but actually these are some of the things that we consider big wins for our stormwater program and for just our CIP in general. This picture on the left here was a project that was completed a couple of years ago. I apologize. It's a construction photo still. It was only one that I could find, and I didn't get a chance to get out there and get a new one. But this was a location. This was an intersection in town where we had some extra room, not a whole lot of it, but we took a look at it. Actually, after construction had started, the engineers came to me and said, "What can we put in to provide some sort of stormwater treatment?" So we came up with ponds. There's actually 3 ponds here. There's this one, there's one on the back side of the sidewalk, and there's one across the street. And we were able to get the 25-year storm event for this small little basin all into these ponds. Now they don't look like much, but there is BSM on the bottom of these. It's covered by fabric and rock. And the reason we chose to go with these is because there is no irrigation out here at this location, and we asked the citizens that lived on the sides here that were adjoining properties, told them what we were planning on doing. They were all in for it, and as you can see, we've got some quite mature trees that are here next door on this side, and they said, "Yeah, go for it. We think this is a great idea, long as you're maintaining it." So we are, and the maintenance on these is pretty simple. They do catch a whole lot of leaves because we do have a lot of mature trees that are in this neighborhood. But actually, the cleaning is a lot easier than our guys expected, and they can pull this is a city street that's right next to here. They can pull the Vector up, they can boom out, they can send the guys down into the pond, and they can just vacuum up the leaves right off the bottom, and it works actually easier than what they thought. So this second picture here in the middle is a picture of our project where we've incorporated permeable pavement. We have permeable hot mix asphalt that is making up the parking strips along this residential street that we have here in town. We decided to do this mainly because we have a very high groundwater table out here in this location. We do have swales that are out here, but we wanted to be able to incorporate something from our toolbox that was not just a swale. And we talked about this with our designer and came up with a plan that worked. We have a lot of these areas on the side here, which are planter strips. Some of our adjacent property owners were very much into having some sort of a swale out there. Others were not. So we tried to mix up the basket here a little bit and incorporate these strips of permeable pavement here. And as you can see, this was taken last fall. We've got some conifer trees on this side of the street, and I will tell you that maintenance, as I mentioned, is a big deal. We have started a maintenance program out here of sweeping these parking areas 4 times a year. We want to be very aggressive about this. We think this might be a little bit too frequent, but we also don't want there to be a buildup of any type of leaf debris that gets ground down into these parking strips. So we're starting out with a sweeping program of 4 times a year for this. We're going to watch it for a couple of years, see how it operates. Maybe we can dial that back a little bit or not, but we're gonna try for that. Then this other picture over here is an area where we actually didn't put any BMPs in at all. We did put some infiltration in, but again, this is another one of our projects in our residential areas where we came through. We had water main that was in terrible shape, leaking thousands of gallons a year that we needed to replace, sewer that was in bad shape. But if you'll notice, we have a lot of very mature street trees along here. So this is one of the locations where we decided, well, why in the world would we want to take all these trees down and put in some sort of a bioinfiltration swale when we've got something here that's already providing us with a whole lot of green stormwater infrastructure. So we did incorporate infiltration in the street in locations where we needed to do it. But for the most part, we just decided to put in curb and gutter, and then curb cuts where water could actually make it over to these areas and then basically be taken up by these trees. So, and I got to tell you, this was a hot button item when this project was being talked about in the general public, and there were a lot of people that did not want to get rid of their trees. So again, trees are kind of important aesthetically, for property values and the like. So whenever you can keep them, I think it's a really good idea to keep them around.